So hello everyone, my name is Hannah Bink. I'll be facilitating today, and I am so happy to introduce Matt Lasater, our host. Matt is the founder of Initiate AI and Engaged Agility, where he spent more than 20 years helping teams and executives change how work actually flows, long before anyone called it an AI problem. He is joined today with special guest Melissa Reeve. Melissa co-founded the Agile Marketing Alliance and is the best-selling author of Hyper-Adaptive, Rewiring the Enterprise to Become AI Native. She spent the last 3 years researching why some enterprise AI efforts take root while others stall out in pilot purgatory. Matt, it's all yours.
Perfect. Well, Melissa, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the webinar here. One thing that I really like is that you have done a ton of research. You've read a lot of books. You've showed me a lot of the books that you've read. We've had some deep discussions, and most of my experience comes from being in the industry and watching people do the thing, which I know you also have experience there, but you've got this deep, well-read knowledge that I absolutely love. So thank you so much for being here.
It's going to be a great conversation.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So, as I've been talking to clients and friends and just about anybody else that'll talk to me about it, I'm always asking, hey, tell me about your AI stuff. Tell me, tell me, tell me. I want to know what you're doing. Why are you doing it? What are you seeing? And one thing that I don't know, I didn't expect to hear, but after I heard it, I wasn't surprised that I was hearing it was we're scared. There's a fear of, and then they inserted stuff into the rest of the sentence about what their fears were. And so I'm excited today that we get to talk about four very specific fears that we've heard and we've seen across the industry, and hopefully give some really good tips on what to do about them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's there. Whether it's being talked about or not. I think all of us just have this unsettling feeling around AI. And, even I as an enthusiast, I just wrote an article talking about AI safety. And so there's so many dimensions we need to think about that I'm glad we're here talking about these fears and bringing them into the light.
Today, as we go through this, and Melissa and I are going to talk about things, there's kind of three views we want to take on what these fears mean and what people can do to help alleviate them. And we're going to look at it from what can an organization do, the organization at large, what's its responsibility in helping to understand, define, and hopefully solve some of these fears. And then there's kind of a middle layer, some change management that has to happen. That we're going to look at what are the tactics that people maybe in middle management, the people leaders that are leading the individual contributors that might have some of these fears. What is it that they can do? And then we're not immune or exempt from handling the fear as well as the people doing the stuff. We have things we need to do for these fears as well. And so we'll kind of look through all three of those lenses as we go through each of the four fears. Here's the four that we're going to talk about. The first one is AI is going to take my job. That one seems really, really common. I hear it all the time. A lot of the entry-level positions are going away. We hear lots of stuff like that. And then the second one, what if I use AI wrong? This one makes me think of my grandmother back when the internet was brand new and she was afraid to Google because it was going to mess up the whole internet. And talk about, will my ideas still matter? If AI can do all of this thinking for us, do they still need me as a human? And then the last one, what if we're spending all of this money on these cool AI things, but no value? We're not getting any value out of it. How do we handle that? So, Melissa, any of these stick out in your head as your favorite one?
Well, it was so when we were prepping for the webinar, will my ideas still matter? That's one that I hadn't really heard before. And so I'm looking forward to diving into that one and surfacing it, talking about it a little bit, and then maybe chatting about why that is or isn't true.
Awesome. I want to ask the same question to everybody that's here. Just type it into chat for us. Is there one of these that kind of piques your curiosity more than others? One that you hear in your organization, or one that you maybe have yourself? Type it in and let us know.
Look forward to hearing what's top of mind for our audience, and maybe we can take a little more time at that question.
Yeah.
Mike
I'm gonna
wrote,
give.
what if we spend all this money and get nothing?
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally spending a lot of money. My Claude subscription. I feel like Claude gets a fair amount of my funds these days. Well, my ideas still matter. Yeah. Yeah. Spend and no ROI. Yeah, thanks for dropping all that in. It's always good to have a little interaction here. We see you, you see us. It's not just one way. I appreciate that. Kristen, good to see you. And good to see you too. Yeah, well, it changed my job. All right. Have we seen this movie before, Matt?
W- We have. We've seen lots of movies like this before. In the last webinar that I did with Mike Robertson, he and I talked about, hey, we've seen a lot of this before, and the principles and practices that we
Mhm.
use to solve these problems, that it's going to be the same stuff. We're going to rely on the same thing. But with this one, we've seen big changes and big shifts before. We've
Mhm.
seen, you know, from railways and steam engines and the Industrial Revolution and the internet, big changes happen all the time.
It's true, yeah. And in fact, as I was contemplating the book, it wasn't even a well-formed idea. Just a little origin story there on the book. So I was running the Agile Marketing Alliance. AI hit marketing early and hard, and I started thinking about this concept of what I was calling at the time an automated execution pipeline. Kind of sounds like it's self-descriptive, right? We know what that is. And I started thinking, where have we seen this before? And where my mind went to was DevOps. And I thought, there's the automation of the software delivery pipeline. I spent the summer rereading the DevOps handbook, took 25 pages of notes. And from that original thought of, we've seen this movie before, I dove into factory automation. I dove into all kinds of things where we've taken something and we've automated it. And part of the book is really thinking about those patterns and what needed to change in those previous efforts, and what needs to change now. Because we know, those of us who've been in this transformation space for a while, we know that we've hit some walls, right? So you've been in the agile transformation space for a long time, Matt. I won't say how long. Um, but we ended up hitting these walls around budgeting and incentives and job descriptions. And so, I feel very strongly, and I'll be interested in your take, like what parts of the movies we feel like we've seen before and what's different this time.
Yeah. I think one of the things that is very different this time that maybe we haven't seen, we thought we were seeing it then, but now we're proving that we were wrong back then, is the rate of change.
Yeah.
Oh, this is happening so fast. And now AI is proving that, hey, that wasn't fast. Let me
Hmm.
show you fast. This is fast, right? But that rate of change is ever present on people's minds,
Yeah.
and we have to keep up, which I think forces some of that fear that we hear about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's you've got it. It's the speed, it's the scale. The agile transformation mainly was contained to technology. AI is hitting across the board. And I like talking about this stat from the World Economic Forum. And it talks about the disruption. And it says that 92 million jobs are going away, and 170 million jobs are going to be created. So that's a net new of 78 million jobs. And what I like to shine the light on, though, is the disruption. So yes, 78 million net new jobs, and those 92 million jobs that are going away, that's the disruption. And we as a society need to be thinking about who owns that disruption. Is it the individual? I've got to upskill and reskill myself. Is it the enterprise saying, I don't want to fire everybody just to rehire my good people back? Is it the government? Is it higher ed? And I think we're going to dive into that more, but I think it's an interesting stat to put out there as we start to think about these fears.
Yeah. And we have to realize that the disruption's not bad. You've got the story of the washing clothes that you talk about. I'll let you tell it, but disruption brings about something that presumably is better in the future, and we learn to deal with it and appreciate it as time goes on.
Yeah, so I do tell this story about the washing machine, and it goes something like nobody wants to go back to beating clothes on rocks. At least nobody that I've met wants to go back to beating clothes on rocks. And so, what happened when we created the washing machine? We saw jobs go from doing the task to building, monitoring, and maintaining the machines that do the task. And hidden under there, and I don't want to discount it, is there used to be full service laundromats, and there still are here and there where you can just drop off your dirty clothes and get them back all folded and ironed and prepped. And so there were more of those. And those people did get displaced with the advent of the washing machine. But that pattern of going from doing the task to building, monitoring, and maintaining the machines that do the task has held steady through the test of time.
Yep. So again, we've seen it before. Disruption has happened before, and we're going to adjust. And I think that some of that disruption, and I'm just reading in the chat here where Alan said, "Hey, is it going to change my job?" And I think the answer is yes. And it may shift from doing the task to managing and monitoring the task and making sure that it happens. And we may not need everybody to do that task anymore, but there will be new ones.
Yeah, and I mean I think we're segueing into our first fear here, right? Because we're already
Absolutely.
starting to talk about what happens to the jobs.
Yeah. So give us your take there. What is it that's going to happen to these jobs? You mentioned, what was it, 78 million new ones? That sounds
Yeah, yeah,
promising.
and so it is displacement. And what I argue in the book is that it is displacement, and who best to shift into building, monitoring, and maintaining than the person who's done that job for 20 years. So let's just take invoice processing. That feels like something that is automatable. And yet, what we know is that somebody has to manage the automation. Somebody has to be looking at the system and saying, well, that one doesn't look quite right. We know that there's going to be escalations. And we know that there's different personality archetypes. One of the anti-patterns I'm seeing right now is people building monocultures around builders. They want people to build. They want everybody to build, and great. That's kind of like asking everybody to be a concert pianist. And I've got this another analogy that I use, that AI is like using the piano. Anybody can walk up to a piano and start banging on the keys, but not everybody can be a concert pianist. And when we look at all the dimensions that are required to run an agent effectively, the security required, the escalation paths required, the just the switching of the models and the capabilities, building agents is going to be its own thing. And monitoring agents is going to be its own thing. Maintaining agents is going to be its own thing. And those are different personality types. The same person who builds it may not want to keep it up to date. The same person who builds it may not be that person with the safety mind who really starts to look at the drift or see where it's going outside of its bounds. And so if you are an individual and you're struggling with this notion of where do the jobs go, just I encourage you to remember your agency, because we all own a piece of this. And while it feels like it's happening to us, I think each one of us can be proactive in thinking about where we might want to play in an automated world.
Yeah, going out and looking at different use cases as to what has AI done in the industry that's similar to the things that I do. What can I expect, and how do I get ahead of that learning curve is huge, right?
So that's at the individual level. If we were to take a look at what happens to the jobs at the organizational level, this is where I would like to see more organizations get really imaginative. So a lot of the organizations that I see when talking about AI, they talk about the productivity and they talk about harvesting the gains. So it's going to make us faster. It's going to reduce the workloads. by the way, not true. My workload has massively increased with AI. And what I think they can do is they can set their AI North Star. So what are we trying to do with AI? And I'd like to cite Moderna with their 15 new drugs in 5 years. Now, interestingly enough, they've had to update that in the past 3 years. I think they're aiming for 10 new drugs in the FDA pipeline by 2027. But what it did is it gave the entire organization a vision of what they could do with AI besides saying, we're just going to automate a bunch of stuff and see how fast we can get. No, we want to save more lives. And so I challenge people at the organizational level, in when you're thinking about those AI jobs, to really set that umbrella, that AI North Star. It creates psychological safety. It gives people meaning. It gives your AI some direction.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen organizations kind of go through a progression. Moderna has this really nice North Star of what they want to do. I feel
Mhm.
like I see organizations say things like, we're going to give everybody AI so that they can play with it. And then
Yeah.
there's the next step up that is we now people have played with AI. We want to find productivity gains, which are
Mhm.
usually like, at least in the beginning, individual productivity instead of organizational productivity. But there's kind of this progression. But I think having that really good North Star of what is it we're trying to do, and AI is going to be a part of it, I think that really becomes key.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I advocate for, because AI has so many use cases. I mean, I like to say that AI learning is social learning because talking with your peers and exchanging, well, how are you using it? How am I using it? Just surfaces all these interesting ways that people are using AI. We actually need to do what I call focus. And focus is just a very simple mnemonic. And this is a little actionable tip for everybody in the audience. So simple mnemonic for narrowing your use cases. F is for fit. Does it fit with our AI North Star? Does it fit with what we're trying to do as an organization? O is organizational pull. If I spend 6 hours building this automation, building this prompt, am I the only one who's going to use it? Or is there organizational pull where it can scale? C is for capabilities. I've seen many organizations say, we're going to automate our entire content delivery pipeline, or we're going to automate this giant thing, and then they don't have the capability to actually do it. So C is for capability. U is underlying data. So, I think that one's self-explanatory, and it's part of the thinking process of, do we have the context, the data? How clean is that data to make this thing work? And S is for success metrics. So great, you built the thing. Can you measure its impact in the organization? And it's just a way for organizations to start filtering through all of those use cases so they can identify those really high impact areas where they can point to and say, this is how we've moved the needle with AI.
I've got a question about North Star development. So,
Sure.
in every organization I've ever worked in, the North Star is either increase revenue by 30% or decrease spend by 30%.
Mhm.
But the example you gave was an organizational wide North Star that we can all impact and all clearly see our piece of. How do we get from a top line or bottom line
Mhm.
view of the world to a North Star that we can actually rally people around?
Yeah, and it's really elevating the ROI into vision and purpose. And I think the best leaders have the ability to do that. Because when you think about that Moderna North Star, 15 new drugs in 5 years, you better believe that 15 new drugs is going to increase revenue. And those who truly do this well, also, let's just say that it was, we're Apple, and we're going to deliver stellar customer experiences. We've got to believe that that's going to lead to competitive advantage, that's going to lead to additional revenue. And I think that we've created this culture around ROI in organization that actually feels a little toxic. Because if you only focus on the ROI, then you'll be like the blocks of the world that are going to lay off half of your staff, only to realize, or even Ford just did this. They laid off 350 engineers of their most senior engineers, only to realize, oops, we over rotated on ROI, and we kind of need to bring those people back. And so I just encourage anybody who's on the call, if you're coaching somebody, if you're part of leadership, just take that next level beyond ROI and think about, what if we were to bend that into vision and purpose? How would that look? And even for your team, if you are a team level individual and you're leading a team, what do you want to create for your team that you think AI can unlock?
We actually have a comment from Paul. Paul, do you want to come off mute and share?
Comment I was making is when you mention North Star, I'm thinking of, like, from a company standpoint, we define strategic goals each year of, from a corporate level, enterprise level, what are we trying to achieve each year? And all the departments try to line up to those strategic goals. And then the other thing with the company I am currently working for, they gave each of us a challenge of coming up with an inventive way of using AI to make our jobs more efficient in the long run. So it's kind of, and we have a group that we collaborate with from an AI perspective, sharing ideas that others have come up with. And we have a shared library where we can pull those prompts out and utilize them and test them and see, is it going to be something that's going to be helpful for my job, even though someone else has created those?
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and just a couple of comments there. Absolutely, people are intuitively gravitating toward kind of that dual purpose. Does it tie up to our organizational purpose? How does it tie to my job? Again, if you're a team, let's say I come from a marketing background, and let's just say that we are going to try and reduce rework by 30% because our creative briefs will be more aligned with the actual work. You can take this AI North Star concept and scale it down. What I'd add to what you said in terms of the sharing is, what I believe needs to happen is we need to put in place dedicated roles to help coordinate some of that flow of information, because we've got the cognitive burden being placed on every individual seems too great. Yeah, I see your note in the chat. Yeah, everybody's expected to do this for their own job in addition to their other full-time job, and keep track of all these great use cases that are popping up in the chat in addition to their full-time job. There's ways around
with your
that.
friend.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, all right, I know we're going off on a little tangent there. So, Matt, keep us on track here.
Sure. I want to add one thing here, just kind of for the middle layer. We touched on it a little bit, but one of the things for any and all of these spheres, for leaders in an organization, be it your manager and director level, all the way up through executives, the human side of all of this is very important, and they have to come out with their good leadership skills and acknowledge that the fear is there and talk about, what can we do to help alleviate this fear? What are the realities that are happening in our organization? And what are the unknowns that we have? Opening up and being honest, transparent, and vulnerable about it is key to anything a leader does. But these types of fears for people like, I don't know what the future holds, it's even more important.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that, because this is where I see organizations falling down, is they're not equipping. So most people get their information from their immediate manager. And I don't see organizations equipping their managers to have those frontline conversations. They don't have the North Star. So the frontline managers don't know, oh, this is our point of view. I call it our philosophical stance. This is why we're using AI. And without that, people just think, well, the only thing we're going to do is harvest the gains. And yeah, you're telling me I'm going to have my job, but I don't believe it. And so absolutely, thanks for highlighting that, Matt.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the next fear.
All right.
What if I do it wrong? What if I blow up the internet or Claude or whatever it might be. Well, what if I push that wrong button?
Yeah.
And one of the things that just is kind of tickling my brain here, I was talking to a guy that he's data science kind of person and organizes all the data to make sure that hopefully the AI works well. And he was telling me about a group in his organization. They used to have access to this data so that they could like look up name, address, and phone number. And it was pretty small, simple little stuff. And the group had the ability to use AI to help them with these tasks and automate a little bit of it. And AI figured out that it actually had access to a lot of data beyond name, address, and phone number that they didn't want exposed everywhere. And so somebody actually did push a button that was a little bit wrong and found out they had access to too much data. And I mean, it obviously didn't blow up the world, but it brought about some insights into, hey, we need a little more control. We need a little more oversight on how our data is being used and where it sits and who has access to it and things like that. So I understand the fear. What do we do about it?
Well, let's talk about that spectrum. So, on the one hand, we have organizations that are over rotating and saying you can't use AI at all. On the other end of the spectrum, we have organizations that are a free-for-all. And I like to say hope is not a plan. And so in the middle of that, you have all kinds of messiness and people trying to figure it out. I think the piece that's missing is the system. So I just released this LinkedIn article talking about aviation. Aviation, high assurance, people can die. You got this metal tube going 500 miles an hour, 7 miles up in the air, and we all do it. It's the safest way to travel. It's 12 times safer than driving to the airport in your car. And it's incredibly complex. And why it's so safe is because we have these layers of essentially, I'm just going to use the G word, of governance, of safety checks all throughout that entire process. The pre-flight safety check, the pilot personally checking, the staff personally checking. And we've learned those lessons the hard way, right? Often through people's funerals, as I say in the article. And are we going to do the same thing with AI? Are we going to wait for the mistakes to happen, the hugging face incidents to happen before we react and say, oops, and we put another rule in place? Or do we know enough, and I think we do, to start building out the systems? So how this starts to look at these three levels we've articulated, if you are an individual, I would invite you in your peer group, however that looks, to nominate a person who is the go-to to track the governance policy. And again, this is the notion that if it's everybody's responsibility, that's a lot of cognitive load. But maybe we can appoint that person to keep track of this changing landscape that we can go to and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Maybe we can even have a custom GPT that we can ask and say, hey, I'm thinking about using this data, as you said, Matt, in this organization. Is that a red light? I shouldn't do it. A yellow light, I can do it with these caveats, or a green light, good to go. But when you think about doing that, the shift that we're describing is a shift from static to dynamic. Governance used to be this thing that we would decide on a quarterly and maybe even annual basis. We'd take forever to write the policy. We'd post that into an intranet, and then we'd disseminate some e-learning that people would watch at triple speed, and take the quiz 4 times just to try and get through it and get it right. That approach isn't going to work anymore. So if you're in a leadership role, I just encourage you to think about that shift from static governance to dynamic governance, and think about how you can build in layers of governance. We don't have time to go through all my thinking on this, but I think that's the general gist of it. And then if you're in the management layer, so that central layer, really getting detailed about decision rights. And anyway, I want to take a little breath there because I can start monologuing and just get
Yeah.
your reactions and what's sparking for you.
There's two things that came to mind for me. One, you said, "Hey, if it's everybody's responsibility, there's a big cognitive load." I'm a Boy Scout through and through. Was in scouting from way young, and when we would learn CPR, it
Mhm.
was you have to get somebody to call 911, and you have to point to someone and say, "You call 911," because if you just say someone call 911, well, there's nobody named someone here, so nobody's going to do it, right? So you
Yeah.
have to have that one person. And I guess we kind of did a little informal poll earlier. Let's do another one. If you are in your organization and you have an AI question of can I, should I do this thing, do you know who it is in your organization that you would ask to say, is
Mm.
this approved? Is this okay? Let us know in chat. Ooh, one gets a very quick yes, which is
Yeah.
exciting
Love that.
because I get a lot of no's when I ask this
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. There's a no. More
Yeah. And
yeses.
I would love maybe just if somebody can come off mute who said yes and just share with the group. This is how we all learn. Um, and just share what that looks like in your org.
We have a dedicated group that oversees our AI guidelines and policies and procedures. And I mean, the company has taken time making sure we have like walls set up where our AI agent can't get outside of the company to access data. We have policies in place where we can't use that sensitive private data to do any kind of AI work. We can only keep it to more generic prompts.
Great.
And
And so I'd love to hear, Paul, how big is your organization and how accessible is that group?
we're 50,000 plus employees, and we have a dedicated intranet page for the group. And I guess we can submit tickets to that group if we have a question come up as to, hey, we're thinking of doing this, but we think it's kind of in that gray area. Can you help us tell us if it's totally off limits or is it allowable kind of stuff?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Do we have someone else who said yes, who wants to share? And
Fear.
just unmuted. And
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
go and
We're so
go
different.
ahead.
So from the huge organization down to the very small organization, we are in touch a lot, and we have regular meetings, and we just are all in communication. So we know, and our CEO is the one who built the platform, so we can really just say, hey, is
Mhm.
this okay or not? And we've got a lot of guardrails already built into it too. So I definitely, hopefully, I know the answer usually, but I know who to go to
Yeah. Well,
if
and I think there's thanks for sharing that, Anne. I think there's another layer to this. What if I use AI wrong? So it seems like orgs are pretty advanced in terms of their governance. And we've also talked about the and-on cord and how in the beginning, Toyota had to make it safe for somebody to actually pull that and-on cord and stop an entire production line. That's a big deal. And so if the worst happens and you blow it all up, is that okay? What happens? Who's responsible? What is your organization's risk tolerance?
It's okay to make mistakes, but we also need to realize that we have to fix them, and we want to fix them so that we don't make them again.
Yeah, and what is your organization's healthiness around that? And just another, we don't need any answers, but I feel like as you're thinking about what if I use AI wrong and it blows up, think about that psychological safety and how either you can create it for yourself, your team, your organization.
Again, something that leadership needs to be responsible for creating, right?
Yeah.
Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I think on that point, I just want to say something about the psychological safety part, because at least in the tech world, it's, move fast and break things, or it has been for a long time. And that sounds great in theory, but then, when something breaks, it's that psychological safety piece of work that I think I think it's becoming more mainstream now in terms of a concept, but I'm really curious, who's actually accomplishing that and who feels psychologically safe enough at work to make a mistake and take accountability for it and work as a team to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I didn't know if anybody had any good examples of that because I'm curious if it's actually in existence for a bigger company. I think smaller companies, it's a little different. I'm not talking about
Sure.
my situation in particular, just in general.
I'll tell you, as I go and I see various companies, right? I mean, we go and we do consulting with small guys to big, huge ones. The amount of psychological safety is directly uh, proportional to the number of levels of leadership from where it starts. So to have a manager that can create a space, it's like, great, this is good, but it only exists within that bubble that manager has the influence on. When you get the executive VP of whatever it is that creates psychological safety, you see it hit big, and it's amazing, but it's relative to the level of leadership that is portraying that psychological safety. And it seems like as soon as the leader says it, everybody underneath you start to see that pattern mirrored throughout that organization at whatever level that is.
Yeah, it definitely has that trickle down effect.
Agree. Yeah.
And you have your hand raised.
Yeah, this is a really quick comment. I think there are different levels of breaking things in safety. And, if you're building something and it doesn't quite go the way you want to, and you can go back and fix and fix and fix, that's like tons of safety in that. It's when, if there's a governance issue that has been broken, problem, or you've got something you're supporting for a customer and it blows up, problem. So some things are, easier than others to screw up.
Yeah, and there's a new comment in the chat. It says, when I make a mistake or break something, I think it depends on size and impact. To me, what this points to is decision rights. And we had a session of the running hyperadaptive organizations class yesterday, and one of the things we were talking about was these decision rights and how in many organizations decisions are kind of made by whoever happens to be in the room. Couldn't make that meeting, you don't get to be part of this decision. Some people lean in more than other people. Sometimes it's the hippo effect, highest paid person's opinion. The way decisions are made in organizations tends to be very, very messy. And so what we need to start doing as we're turning some decisions over to AI, and in the book, I articulate 4 different levels in terms of size and impact on decision making, is we need to tease that apart and become much more disciplined. And I think in the act of doing that, we not only make better decisions or more structured decisions, but we also start to identify those guardrails. Because as part of that process of determining size and impact is we're saying, who's accountable for this decision and to what degree. So that's another aspect of what if I use AI wrong and it blows up in my face.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to go back and answer the 3 questions that we promised to answer because they're all there. We just maybe didn't articulate them specifically, and then we'll move on to the next sphere. From an organizational perspective, it's about the governance. We've got to move from static to dynamic governance. From the middle level, it's about decision rights. We have to let the people that have the most information about a decision make those decisions, and we can't always wait to go back to some central council to get the decisions. And then at the individual layer, it's about picking that one person that is the one that knows the policy, knows the governance that we need to follow, and can either make the decision right there and inform people on how it should work, or has quick access to get the answer. All right.
Love it.
Fear number 3, we can let AI do a whole lot of thinking for us.
Mm-hmm.
What if it does all the thinking for me and I don't have to do anything anymore? Well, my ideas still matter. Is everybody going to defer to, well, AI says this, therefore we should probably go do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you and I were chatting about this before the webinar, and I had a strong point of view. I said, I think ideas are the only thing that matters because AI is garbage in, garbage out. And if you put good ideas into AI, it can be an amplifier. If you rely on AI to create your ideas, you will it will sink to the lowest common denominator. And I already see it in AI writing, and I use AI plenty for writing. So there's no judging going on here, but I can see it, right? Like actually, this word actually just pops up, or the question is, and we see these patterns in the writing. And that's not to say that conceptually it isn't sound. I'm sure it is. But I think like I'm starting to hit this point with AI writing where I'm getting bored of it. I want to see more creativity in it. And so I think that's what'll keep it fresh is those people who can move beyond AI, who can say, here's a hot take or here's a fresh take. Now, I want to caveat that in a couple of ways. One is not everybody is an ideas person. I happen to be an ideas person. I happen to love ideas, maybe a little too much. And that's where this notion that there's other personality archetypes that are needed in the system. We need that person who loves to dive into the minutia and point out everything that's wrong with AI and that it's doing wrong. We need that person. That's what's left for you. We need the person who's like, you know what? I kind of like checking the box, like, and just, making sure everything's running smooth and it's going well. We still need you because even if AI can do that for you and kind of monitor things, we're going to need the telemetry. And somebody has to look after the telemetry. Like if we hand the entire system over to AI, we're going to get the hugging face incidents. We're going to get agents that go, woo, look what I found. Look what I did. And we're like, oh, that's not what we meant for you to do. So I think there's still plenty left. And we've seen this over and over, whether it's the washing machine, whether it's factory automation, there's new industries that haven't even been designed yet. And I like to talk about this wish that I have. And this was based out of a video I saw in 2018, so I don't want to take the entire credit. But it's this notion that Melissa could be standing in her home office, but appearing as a hologram on a stage in Beijing, speaking Chinese in real time in my little holographic chamber that I stepped into, that's scanning my arm movements in real time and capturing that enthusiasm. I mean, we have this and it's fine. It's a nice proxy. But I think there's entirely new industries that'll be created that need people to, just like the washing machine, create that holographic container to do the real-time translation. And so I think it's all ideas and there's plenty left for everyone.
We have to remember that AI has access to and can analyze a ton of data very, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that data that it has access to is things that we as humans have given it. So it is only referencing things that have already been created in the past. The creation in the future is up to us. We have the rights and the skills to continue to do that. And that's where we step in, is we get to create whatever is next.
Yeah. Yeah. And I use this analogy that AI is like telling a group of people to draw a cat. And if you ask 25 people to draw a cat, you are going to get 25 different cats. And that's your individual talent, agency. And I'm not saying everybody's going to be great at drawing a cat, but it's yours. It's yours to own. It's yours to improve. Like that's what you're bringing to the table if you're an individual.
Just as you talk about, having these skills and what you bring to the table, we have to have time to do it. And I think that as organizations and as leaders, we have to allow people to have that time and space to be creative, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're all locked in place and we do the one thing over and over and over every day, we don't get to come up and look around and go, what would be a new creative idea for us to do here that might make life better?
Yeah, and this is like Google's 20% to go play. They've had that for years. And wouldn't it be great if alongside Paul, your, go find your individual productivity gains, that they were saying what you were supposed to do with that? Is what do you do with that gain? Do you just do more work? Do you use it, redirect it to the mission? I remember that analogy of like the jar and you have the rocks in the jar and put the rocks in first and then the sand trickles in. I feel like AI is the reverse of that, where you take this big rock out and unless you protect that space where the rock was, the sand just collapses in. And all of a sudden you're just doing more sandy type stuff rather than finding another big rock to chase.
I like that analogy. I'm gonna have to do it in the real world. Have to get me a jar with some rocks and play that game. I love it. All right, I'm going to summarize here for us because this was our promise at the beginning. From an organizational level, organization has to decide, are we going to use AI to amplify the good ideas of our people? Or are we going to use AI to replace what they do, replace their thinking, and make everything automated? Management has to protect the thinking time, protect the creativity that individuals have and encourage them to have it. And then as individuals, we are the ones. We are the ones that have that creative stuff. Computers can't think of it for us. They can't do it for us. It's our responsibility to be creative. Did I miss any of them, Melissa?
No, that's great. I appreciate that because I know we have a lot that we've covered. We still have one more fear.
We have one more. Let's jump into it. This is the one that all of the executives, everybody that's in portfolio management, they're saying this one. We got money to spend on AI, but is it going to be worth it? What if nothing happens?
And so many organizations are right there. And I think you see we've got this arc forming throughout the conversation. If you just sit there and tell people to go play with AI, and Paul, I'd feel free to weigh in on this because you're living it, and I know other people on the call are living this. If you tell people go play with AI, go find an area of your work that needs improving, yeah, we can find it. Is that going to show up on the bottom line? Maybe. But if we focus it, we have a better chance of doing that because of that rock in the sand. You found a great place to be productive in your work, but what replaced that rock? Was it something meaningful? Was it something measurable? And I think that's one of the reasons why we're struggling to find the ROI. The second reason I think we're struggling to find the ROI is because, quite honestly, we don't have the measurement systems in place. So people are using these proxies like, how many tokens did you use? Or how many prompts did you use? And it's ridiculous, to be quite honest. And that's why when you go back to that focus mnemonic that we talked about in the beginning, the S is success metrics. And we not only need those success metrics for our own individual efforts, but they need to ladder up. So one of the things I talk about in the book is this, what I call an AI activation hub. And it's kind of like a center of excellence, but with a broader scope. So one of the things that they do is they are surfacing the best use cases. Again, it's not on everybody's job description, or it's not in everybody's job description to be surfacing the best use cases. We task that to a specific group with named responsibilities to be surfacing these, to be measuring these, to be spreading these in a network throughout the organization so that we can really track the impact through the organization. So if you think about those layers you've been talking about, the organization needs to get focused. We talked about the AI North Star. They need to put this measurement system in place. It may piggyback on the measurement systems you already have, but just like you said with the 911, it can't be someone's job to to measure things, to track things. It has to be a named person with very specific parameters of what we're measuring against. And in that way, we start to unlock the ROI. And again, you can do this at multiple layers. You can do it at an organizational layer. If your span of control is only your team, try doing it within your team or as an individual. How can you start challenging yourself to demonstrate ROI? And wouldn't you look like a hero if you went to your next team meeting with some metrics that showed how what you were doing actually laddered up to your team and your organizational goals?
I really like the focus mantra in my head and that success factor at the end. And I just go back to Moderna that you were talking about earlier. And it's like, there's a success metric that's right there. We're going to do, what was it, 15 new drugs in 5 years? Like you could just have 15 check marks on a wall. Did I get these 15? But yet we come back to the things that are much easier to, I don't know, they're somewhat easier to measure. I say that as I simplify putting 15 check marks on a wall, but we understand money in, we understand money out. It's things we can look at every day. Line goes up, it's good. Line goes down, it's bad. And those are so easy, but having that North Star and having that success metric that drives us toward it is huge.
Yeah, and Mick Kirsten just wrote a great book. I want to give him a little shout out. It's called Output to Outcomes, and he has built some systems. He calls it the outcome loop to shift us from how many of the widgets do we need to produce to how are we measuring the outcome and how are we tying that to value.
I'm going to give us the summary again really quick. I think we hit on all these. Melissa, correct me if I'm missing something, but from the organizational level, when we're looking at this idea of spending money, but am I getting any benefit out of it? It's about the North Star and having some success metrics that everybody is aligned to throughout the organization. At the change management layer and the middle layer, it's about using that focus filter over and over again and making sure that the things you're working on today really are hitting that North Star. And from the individual layer, part of it is we have to get out of the go play with AI and I can use it to proofread my emails. We have to start driving AI to actually fix the problems, to improve the workflow that we have. And while it's great to improve the workflow for me, the individual, it's better to improve the workflow for us, the small team that I'm on, and it's better to do it for my larger organization, on and on and on, right?
Absolutely.
Did I miss any of them?
No, I think you nailed it.
All right. I had this slide in the last webinar and I was like, I really like where this is going. And I think it's just a good wrap-up slide, and it may stay to be my wrap-up slide for all the webinars. But as we kind of dig through this, the question isn't whether your teams are ready for AI. In fact, most of your teams are using AI. The question is whether your leadership system is ready for the speed at which AI moves and the speed at which we can learn with AI. Yeah. And I think that's important. And we've touched on it over and over again. There's multiple responsibilities here to help with these fears. And it's not just the individuals using AI that are in control of alleviating those fears. The responsibility relies across the organization. All right, Melissa, give us the little bit about your book here. It's a great book.
Well, I've teased it a bunch. I've teased it a bunch. So if anything has resonated with you, I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is the blueprint, stage by stage. It stands on the shoulders of giants. Peter Senge, Learning Organizations, John Kotter, Clayton Christensen says, if they were alive today, what would they be advocating for in this age of AI? It takes your organization iteratively and incrementally from 5 stages from where you are today into this AI native future. Really enjoy talking about it. Don't hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to always have conversations. Really appreciate the conversation with you here today, Matt.
Absolutely. It's been great and I appreciate you coming. If you guys would like to sit and talk about this kind of stuff, scan the QR code here. We can get together and chat about any of these fears, how they're affecting your job. What can your organization specifically do about it? Because while the answer is generically the same for a 15-person organization or a 50,000-person organization, the actual implementation of that is obviously very, very different. So feel free to sign up there. And just so you guys know, I will be at SAFE Summit, which is coming up in September 14th through 18th. If you want to get together while I'm there, please scan this. It'll give you a little a little Calendly link where we can get together at the summit. We can chat. I know many of you from previous engagements and stuff, but if you want to get together in person and maybe even go to dinner and stuff, click the link and let's go. With that, we have just a little bit of time for Q&A. I don't see any that are floating around in chat, but if you've got questions, please let us know.
We've got a luxurious minute, and I appreciate everybody who has shown up today. Hi, Yvonne. Good to see you.
Hello. I'm under the weather, but I just had a quick thing that came to mind during all of this. So it's good to see you, Melissa. You know, we talked about it really goes beyond cost savings because to me, energy and cost savings, I mean, they're really table stakes now at this point in AI journey. And when we're making that space for more time, I think that's the time for us to really have the humans leaning into their creativity and innovation and time for companies to grow, right? Think of all of the things that AI can do for us on those mundane tasks and let humans do, you know, what humans can do best that a lot of times we don't have time for. So I think that, you know, humans can now do a lot more that they couldn't do in the past because we really need to have humans coming up with those ideas. We talk about human in the loop. I contend it's really human in the lead, right? Humans are leading in AI. So
yeah, that's a great point to end on. Really appreciate that.
Mhm.
Thanks for jumping on to make that point.
All right. Well, if anyone has any questions that you think of later on, we are a email, Slack, LinkedIn, whatever away, and we will see you next time. Thank you all.